I'm a former NASA scientific researcher. My division was in charge of studying deep-sea life, both fauna and flora, in the world's oceans. Here are some facts. 70% of the world is ocean. The deepest part of the ocean is not the Mariana Trench. There's tons of underwater cave systems further down, some quite large. We have not identified every life form down there. Knowing these, let me tell you why NASA fired me and a small team of fellow researchers from the Oceanographic Division, hired completely new personnel, and switched to space exploration. In their defense, I had no interest in continuing my research. Before I begin, I want to say that most of the division actually did study underwater life forms to varying degrees, but most researchers were not involved with the life forms that my team investigated. Therefore, no information about these events has ever been released to the public, at least to my knowledge. I'm purposely going anonymous here for many reasons, as the US government would prefer to keep this out of the public eye, and people have disappeared for far less in my profession. On an off note, it's deeply tragic what happened recently with the submarine that imploded. I think I'm correct in my suspicion on what caused it, of course, but it's not what the public was told. Anyway, I will now detail a few incidents that I think the public needs to be aware of. Case Study 1. Montexera Oil Rig Diving Incident. I was involved with a study that was sanctioned between NASA and a private corporation to investigate an unknown anomaly. Metal parts at the bottom of the rig had taken damage from an unknown source, and a dive team of 3 was sanctioned to investigate it. The dive did not go well. Something we'd never seen before was down there with the divers. We don't know much about it, but I can tell you what we do know now. It resembles an extremely intelligent class of giant cephalopods, more intelligent than any other sea creature ever encountered. They are strong and carnivorous and extremely large. It's theorized that purposely damaged the rig to lure humans deep down. It's unknown what they normally eat, or why they sometimes decide to target humans, but it is clear that they will not hesitate to eat us. The 3 divers that were attacked have little means to defend themselves. These cephalopods worked in unison, with an extreme understanding of human equipment. One cephalopod moved a diver's air tank from his back, while another removed his fins. Their tentacles have extreme suction and can attach to any object. Dive knives did not appear to damage their bodies, where in the past divers have been able to fight off Humboldt squids and other cephalopods with them. A second diver was choked by the cephalopod from behind as another created a striking light display with its body, showing they had an understanding of how humans breathe. Note, they can flash and take on any color as it suits them, unlike other squids, but normally they resemble a black-blue color which is almost imperceptible at the deep depths that they live. It explains in parts how they are able to avoid discovery. Of course, none of us saw them coming in the research vessel up top, and it was too late to warn anyone. The 2 divers who were attacked perished, and we can only assume they were likely consumed. Amazingly, the 3rd diver was able to use an underwater flare to escape and report back the event's detail. As it stands, fire is this life form's only known weakness. Case Study 2. USS Cyclops missing ship log recovery. What began as a normal shipwreck investigation has arguably become one of the biggest cover-ups in history. The ship's location has not been released to the public, and I agree that it should be kept secret. The beings that took the ship down should be avoided at all costs. To this day, the public does not know anything other than that a US ship disappeared. Perhaps these creatures can be blamed for other missing ships, though we cannot prove that. The ship had a log that detailed the same beings encountered at the Montexera oil rig, black-blue giant squid resembling entities that work in teams and can use tools of human creation. These cephalopods engaged the ship at night in a surprise attack and damaged it beyond repair. They dragged down survivors, including many from atop lifeboats using their tentacles. They left no trace of their encounter. They are clearly incredibly strong and can easily hold humans underwater, drowning them. There's a theory that they may even derive pleasure in killing, shown by them flashing certain patterns on their bodies immediately upon the taking of a life. Although this is still just a theory, there are other incidents that I won't get into here. I don't intend to scare people by bringing this information to light, but I do think that divers and people who are interested in using submersibles to investigate the deep sea need to be warned. These creatures normally stay in very, very deep water, and there's only a few incidents of human interaction. For a common person, they generally pose no threat. While extremely intelligent, they have not shown the ability to create tools, only to use those which humans have made. It is likely that they only go after humans when they are unable to find sufficient food sources in their own environments. We believe them to just be another species of giant squid, albeit an extremely intelligent one. I cannot understand why our government is hiding their existence, as they are just natural sea predators like sharks and orca whales. But whatever the reason, remember this: humans are not the top predators in the deep ocean. Naturally, NASA has chosen to avoid further exploration of the deep sea, for now, to avoid contact with these creatures, until the proper measures are put in place. 95% of the ocean remains unexplored. It may be difficult to wrap your head around, but it's true. Despite all the species we've discovered, the depths we have dived, and the waves we have sailed, the ocean is still largely alien to the human race. Considering it covers 96.5% of the Earth's surface, this figure can become terrifying if you think about it for too long. Imagine this: if only a tiny portion of the ocean has been explored, then what else is there to discover? What creatures have evaded us? What secrets remain unearthed? Will we ever truly understand any of it? What sacrifices will be made in the name of knowledge? How far will we go? While the vastness and mystery of the ocean is terrifying to some, for others it fuels an intense curiosity. As one of those people, both my parents were marine biologists, and they taught me that the ocean was something to marvel at, not fear. There was a time when I considered becoming a marine biologist myself, but I hadn't inherited my parents' strong academic drive, so I decided I would become a professional diver. My parents were supportive of this dream, but insisted I attend college so that I would have something to fall back on. I graduated in 2006 at the age of 21, got a job at a secretary, and immediately enrolled in a training program for divers and obtained my certification. I was, as my mother would put it, over the moon. After a couple of years spent scraping together enough work experience, I was offered a job with an organization that specializes in marine salvaging. I quit my secretary job and devoted myself entirely to diving. It was physically taxing, sometimes dangerous work, but I loved it and wanted to continue diving until the day I died. In January of 2013, a freak storm caused a cargo ship to sink in the North Pacific Ocean, many miles from land. My team was sent out to salvage what we could. I distinctively remember how cold it was that morning. The gray sea and sky blending together in a bleak, murky mess. The waves were rough that day, and the wind fell like razor blades against my skin. We reached the shipwreck site and sprang into action, gearing up and diving in, braving the cold. As I sank below the surface like I had done countless times before, I was unnerved at how dark it was. How heavy the water felt, bearing down on my back like a hydraulic press. I normally relished every minute I got to spend at the ocean, but today I was nervous, as if my gut knew something my mind hadn't yet registered. As I went deeper, the pressure became almost unbearable. I wanted to make for the surface, but my limbs felt cemented in place. I could hardly breathe, and the realization that I was drowning hit me like a freight train. How did this make any sense? I was a professional, for Christ's sake. Where was my team? How did they notice I was in trouble? I opened my mouth to scream, unleashing a torrent of bubbles. My chest filled with water, then I lost consciousness. When I opened my eyes again, I was still underwater, except it was no longer dark. I appeared to be floating in an otherworldly blue light that pulsed as if alive. The familiar, comforting weight of my tank was gone, as was my wetsuit. I was completely naked. The fact that I could breathe made me think I must be trapped in some kind of air bubble. What the fuck was going on? Hello, I called. My voice sounded muted and strange this deep down. Anyone? I looked down, and what I saw amazed me. I was hovering above a group of humanoid sculptures, arranged in a circle. There were about 9 or 10 of them in total, carved from some kind of gray stone decorated with barnacles and seaweed. The sight was so bizarre that for a moment I forgot about my situation and marveled at the sight. I had to get closer. I wanted to see those statues up close. I wanted to touch them. I didn't know why, but the lure they had over me was powerful. They were the moon. and I was the ocean tide, bound to them by a powerful force nothing else could replicate. I kicked and paddled, and slowly the air bubble began to sink, down, down, and down. I landed in the middle of the circle, now dwarfed by the statues, all of which stood about 7 feet tall. I let out a tiny gasp when I saw that they had no faces, just smooth surfaces. It made my skin crawl, yet I couldn't bring myself to look away. Beautiful, aren't they? The voice was deep and rumbling, intimidating yet soothing. It was how I imagined the ancient Greek god of thunder would sound. I rolled around frantically, but saw nothing. Look down, child. I looked down and screamed. A massive eye about 10 feet wide peered up at me. It was eerily human-like, with a giant black pupil in the middle of a vivid green iris. It darted around, following my every move, like some colossal security camera. Fear not, child. What are you? I shrieked. Where am I? What are these? I gestured wildly at the statues. Things. What is going on? Silence, child. I understand that you have many questions, but you must remain calm. Stop calling me that, I yelled, my panic and confusion spilling out in a form of anger. I'm 28 years old. You are a child to me. I've been around since the dawn of man. I was here before you were born, and I will remain long after you die. Good to know, I snapped. Now, will you tell me where the fuck I am? If the entity found my language offensive, it didn't let on. You are at the bottom of the ocean, child. Who are you? The creature laughed. I have been called a great many things. People have called me God, monster, abomination, a being from another dimension. I assure you I am none of these things. I truly am one of a kind. Do you have a name? Not in the traditional sense, I suppose. You can call me King. I'm the ruler of the ocean after all. Okay, King. Why am I here? Well, child, you wandered unknowingly into my realm. How? I do not know, but it doesn't matter. Still, I'm curious as to what you're doing so deep in the ocean. I'm a diver. We were on a salvaging mission. I see. So you were trying to reclaim what these vast waters have already taken. There was a note of bitterness to the voice that made me pause. What? The ship you had been sent to salvage, it belonged to the ocean. It belonged to me. Every ship that sails into a storm, every man who is swallowed by the waves, never to be seen again. It belongs to me. You have no right to take it. I felt like a misbehaving toddler being reprimanded by a parent. The statues, despite their lack of features, seemed to be staring down at me with disapproval. I don't understand, I said. Of course you don't. No one does. You humans don't give the ocean the care and respect she deserves. Sure, there have been tribes who worshipped her as a sacred entity, people who fight to preserve the animals, fish, and plants who call the ocean home. However, there are those who pollute the ocean, kill her creatures, and make it impossible for me to care for her properly. The eye had now gone dull with deep anguish and despair, and my heart twisted inside my chest. I'm sorry. A heavy sigh rumbled across the ocean floor, shaking the air bubble and nearly knocking me off my feet. Allow me to show you something, child. With a blinding flash of blue light, the statue's hand eyeball vanished, and once again I was in the dark, curled in the fetal position and shivering violently. A vision crept into my head, vivid and colorful, and as real as anything I've ever seen. A coral reef, brimming with fish in every color of the rainbow. Among them were species I didn't recognize, species that seemed almost alien. It was like a living, breathing, swimming painting, beautiful and full of life. Flash. A giant sea turtle in jewel shades of green, its paddle-like fins sending ripples across the water. Flash. A drowned passenger ship slowly disintegrating, covered in barnacles, tragic, morbid, and yet so beautiful. Flash. A marble tablet etched with archaic-looking ruins, half buried in grainy, pebbly sand. Flash. The ruins of an underwater city, an expanse of stone temples, towers and pyramids, of obelisks, spires, and even more of those faceless statues, long abandoned and silent as a grave. Flash. Back where I started, with the eye staring expectantly at me. What you have seen is what remains untouched of the ocean. I don't understand, I wept. The beauty of what he'd shown me had brought me to tears. What can I do? Don't tell anyone what you have witnessed today. The eye closed, the air bubble popped, and I was alone. I don't remember the rescue, I don't remember being brought onto the boat, or coughing up buckets of water. I don't remember the helicopter ride to the hospital. All I remember is waking up to the white hospital walls. I kept my promise to King. When they asked me what had happened, I told them I didn't remember. I drew elaborate sketches of what I'd seen, before tearing them up and throwing them away. I continued to dive, but with less sense of adventure. I was more cautious, more aware of the things I couldn't understand. Time went on and my memories grew fade, at the edges, but never faded. There were times when I questioned my own sanity, if what I'd seen had just been one long crazy dream. I had no way to verify what had happened except for my memories, and so I held on to them as tightly as I could. Even as the months turned to years, I married, I birthed a child, I moved on with my life. The world shifted and warped around me, ever-changing, ever-evolving. The ocean, which covers 96.5% of the Earth, is 95% unexplored. Despite all the species we have discovered, the depths we have dived, and the waves we have sailed, the ocean is still largely alien to the human race. There's so much we don't know, secrets that remain unearthed, and people with curiosity that can't be quenched. There are those who know earth-shaking truths, but for the sake of preserving something so amazing, never divulge them. 95% of the ocean remains unexplored, and that is just fine by me. Has anybody heard of the ocean conspiracies? Now, I'm nobody special, but my uncle on my mother's side is. I've only met him a handful of times, but he was nice enough from what I can remember. Not terribly memorable though. When I was younger, I never really knew what he actually did in terms of employment. My mother told me that he worked for the government. That's also what he told me himself, really nothing beyond that. This wasn't really a cause of concern in my life. I mean, why should I have cared? I only started thinking about it after he disappeared. He stopped coming over for holidays, and my Skype conversations with him ceased completely. I went to my mother for answers, obviously, but she just said that he relocated. I was 16 at this point and smart enough to realize that this blatant non-answer from her meant she wasn't going to talk about it. I started thinking that the worst had happened, that he'd been in an accident or something, and that my mother was grieving. But nobody else seemed to be talking about him. My dad and him were never particularly close, but you'd think that he'd say something about it, right? In any case, I kind of forced myself to push this into the back of my head. If he really was gone, then I guess I'd have to move on. I wasn't terribly close with him either, after all. But then something happened a few months afterwards. It was around midnight, and being the slacker that I am, was up writing a paper for school. I took out my headphones and got up to use the washroom when I heard voices coming from downstairs. I assumed it was my parents, but upon listening closer, the male voice was not my dad. It was my uncle. It sounded like he was arguing with my mom about something, but trying to keep it as quiet as possible. I listened closer and began making out sentence fragments, stuff like, "I have to go," and "they don't know how to fix it, I wasn't supposed to know." I kept hearing one word sprinkled in throughout the entire duration, which he was always talking about: ocean. I considered going down and seeing what was happening, but he left before I could make the decision. I heard him storm out of the house and start his car before speeding off. I really did want to mention to my mom that following morning, but she was acting like nothing had even fucking happened. Obviously there was some sketchy shit going on here, but did I really want to know? At the time my answer was no. I still had my own life to live after all. If this was a rabbit hole that I didn't have to go down, then I wasn't going to. Fast forward 8 years and I've moved out, landed a software development job and living by myself in the city. I hadn't really thought about my uncle's sins. I mean, it was kind of weird that nobody brought him up during the subsequent family gatherings, but again, fuck that rabbit hole. However, I think I've changed my tune on that. It was a Thursday night and I was browsing the internet. I started off with Reddit, YouTube, etc. before launching Tor to see if there was anything more interesting on deep or dark web. I didn't find anything particularly noteworthy until I stumbled upon some forum where they were discussing a multitude of topics ranging from paranormal encounters to government conspiracies. There was one thread that caught my attention. Weird shit going on in the ocean. The ocean. Memories of my uncle flashed through my eyes. I had to read it. The basic gist of the discussion went something like this. The original poster had a brother who, with some vague government job, who had gone missing recently. The night before, the brother showed up at the door incredibly frantic and mostly incoherent. He was droning on about something related to the ocean. Problem was, his speech was so fragmented that the OP couldn't scrape together any cogent meaning. Abruptly, he apologized before running off, leaving the OP stunned. His attempts to get into contact with his brother afterwards yielded nothing. He was a ghost. The only thing that the brother had given him was a thick set of paper documents that had been burned to the point of falling apart upon the slightest touch. He could only make out the first page, which simply had the words, Ocean Conspiracies. Test Site CKX9 Analysis. The comments were filled with people either calling his bluff, pretending to be government agents, or making theories. A few of the comments that I distinctively remember were these. Sorry for the offensive language if you care. I didn't write this. Quote, none of you fucking F-slur better talk about this on the normie sites. They know what you're searching up. They know what you post. Whatever you post it, mention anything about these ocean conspiracies, they'll come after you. But here was the reply to the comment above. Just shows that you people literally don't know what's going on out here. People know about it, not a lot, but they're out there. They don't give a shit about outsiders trying to search. They won't find anything. The only thing they care about are people who know about it and can prove what's going on, like OP's brother probably was. What followed were a bunch of people asking him about how he knew, and these were his replies. Look, I never was high clearance, so I only know bare bones surface level shit. There's something going on in the Arctic and Pacific Oceans. Something weird, maybe the Indian as well. Although I didn't have confirmation on that. Hell, I don't have confirmation for any of this. It might all be a diversion. I've even heard rumors that it's only in the Dead Sea, but it's not just one thing, it's a bunch of shit that seems to be isolated, which worries them. They usually take place in the middle of nowhere, but there's been incidents near coastlines as well. What's going on? I don't know exactly. Like I said, bare bones. The fact that I'm aware something's going on at all makes me a liability. Even more cause I don't work there anymore. Of course they're still tracking me, but I'm pretty sure that they can't track this. I'll tell you about what I've heard though. One of the biggest things is that the government has very limited control here. They can't always predict or contain whatever's going on. Also, calling them ocean conspiracies is likely a diversion tactic. They're not really conspiracy theories if they're actually happening, right? They know this. They know what they're doing. Ignorance is bliss. There was a drilling project under the code name Heaven out in some remote part of the Pacific. I'm not sure what they were drilling for or if any drilling even happened at all, but I've been told that the water's shallow over there, like waist level shallow. That's the issue. The geography doesn't make sense. 1 second there's an infinite blackness below and then suddenly you're standing on the surface. There's something wrong with that surface, I assume, but nobody ever found out what. The rig was decimated after a week, like an invisible fucking meteor had crashed into it or something. No surviving accounts. I heard this one from a freighter crew member. Apparently, he saw what they refer to as the aqua arachnids, giant spider-like things that walk on the water's surface. The worst thing about them is their heads. They look to be wrapped in some kind of wet gauze, but their eyes can be seen through it. They're definitely human eyes. Alright, I really dislike talking about this shit, so I'll leave it off at this. Something that happened at a beach resort in Mexico. A mother's watching her kids splash around in shallow water near the shore. No danger there, right? Suddenly it looks as if the child gets pulled under, but it doesn't make any sense. The water was only up to her knees, but she disappears completely. The mother starts running towards where her child was, but she pops back up mere seconds later. Somewhat faced at first, she simply starts splashing around again like nothing ever happened. However, there was a black marking on her arm that wasn't there before, a triangle with a square in it. Not cut like a scar, but like a permanent tattoo. I'm thinking that this one has to be related to the drilling rig. Look, there's a bunch of other shit that I'll post if I think I can get away with it, and if I feel like it. His comments ended there, but I've been monitoring this user's for updates ever since. I've considered messaging him personally, but that's tentative for now. Not until I can get a better sense of what's going on here. Obviously, the OP's story about his brother kind of creeped me out, eerily resembling what happened with me and my uncle. I've been thinking about it some more. After he ran away, we did get a lot of friends of his coming by. almost always while I was home alone. I'm also not sure if I've been seeing indistinct men in suits at a higher rate than I should be. I just never paid attention to any of them. There's also this guy in my office who's been trying to hang out with me after work, but I've stared at his screen before. He's just typing gibberish. Maybe I've been in this rabbit hole for longer than I've known. What did my uncle do? What is going on in the ocean?